No, you did not read the title wrong. I really was offered a guide dog for free. But I turned it down and said no. Let me explain why. Oh, who's your good boy? Who's your good boy? You wanna come with me? You wanna be my guide dog? No! Hi, my name is Josh Tseng. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about what it's like to live with blindness. One question I often get from people who are animal lovers or people who are more well informed about the lifestyle of people with vision impairments is, why don't you have a guide dog? Because a lot of people are aware that I am actually qualified to get a guide dog, and here where I live in Singapore, you can actually get guide dogs for free. And a lot of people are just completely shocked that anyone in their right mind would turn down having a dog for free. But there is a lot more to this story, and I want to educate people on what it's really like to have a service animal. So let's get into it and let's see the reasons why I don't have a guide dog. So before I go into every single reason why I don't have a cute service doggo, let's talk a little bit about how you get a guide dog in the first place. So it totally depends on where you are, where you live and stuff. But here where I live, which is Singapore, we have a charity called Guide Dogs Singapore. Now, contrary to its name, they don't just focus on providing guide dogs. What they do is actually a little bit more comprehensive and complex, which is offering a service that we call orientation and mobility, or it is sometimes called O&M for short. Now, what these services do is they train people like me, people with low vision or vision impairments or blindness. They train people like us to be able to walk from point A to point B in an independent manner. And so an O&M session which is successful would involve a professional trainer scouting the location and then teaching people like me how to walk a specific route so that we can do it safely and consistently. And of course, most importantly, independently. And so the vast majority of Guide Dogs Singapore's clients are actually cane users, people like me who use the cane to walk outdoors and navigate. In fact, there are only about 10 guide dogs who are actively deployed here in Singapore, and so that gives you an idea for how rare it is for people with vision impairments to start using a guide dog. And so in any case, if Guide Dog Singapore has a client that would like to adopt the use of a guide dog, let's say me, Guide Dog Singapore can hook us up and they will provide a guide dog for free. In fact, they have asked me on numerous occasions if I would like a guide dog, and I have repeatedly said no. And so let's start with how people like me, if we are interested, can get a guide dog, because that's actually one of the top reasons why a lot of people don't get a guide dog. And it's because the process is extremely involved and time consuming. And so charities like Guide Dog Singapore, when they start the process of pairing a client with a suitable guide dog, they ask a lot of questions and take a lot of notes on things like, the person's lifestyle, how fast they walk, yes, they really do measure that, and even the person's personality. There are also some questions about preference. So for example, here in Singapore, we still have a lot of people who are superstitious. It is a Southeast Asian country, and so there's a lot of people who are actually scared of black colored dogs. And so a lot of us here who are guide dog users actually end up using yellow Labradors. So after gathering your needs, your preferences, and what you want out of the guide dog, the charity will do their best to find a suitable dog, and this can take anywhere from a few weeks to sometimes even months. And once they find a suitable dog, it is just a suitable candidate, a nomination if you will, because they still have to figure out if the two of you can work together in practice, and the handler also needs to start the bonding process with the guide dog. This training usually takes about 3 weeks if I'm not wrong, and during that period, the guide dog would be familiarized with the owner, and the owner would be familiarized with the methods of instructing a guide dog, because yes, guide dogs don't magically know where to go. You have to tell them how you want to get from point A to point B, and this involves a set of comprehensive instructions like go forward, go left, and you can even get guide dogs to pee on command. Yes, this is a real thing. In Singapore, a lot of the guide dogs that we have are trained to respond to the phrase quick quicks. And after you perform the appropriate setup, which is tying a plastic bag to the dog and bringing them to a grass patch, they will pee and do their business on command. It is endlessly amusing for me to tease my friends by instructing their dogs to pee on command, and they're like, you know they won't listen to you, right? I'm like, but maybe they will.
Bruh.
I'm such a horrible friend. I'm such a dick. And so anyway, to get back to the point, even after all that training, there's still a chance that the pairing between you and a guide dog can fail. And that is extremely demoralizing, especially if you've been waiting for months and months and months to finally get your guide dog, thinking today will be the day, and it isn't. So that is actually the first and often most important reason why a lot of people don't pick up a guide dog, because the barrier to start in the first place is already so monumentous. But for someone like me, this is not the reason why I don't have a guide dog. If I really wanted one, I would be prepared for everything that I just described. For the multiple months of waiting, for the training process, for the possibility of the dog and you not being a good match, I am totally prepared for something like this. So really, what are the reasons why I don't have a guide dog? Well, here are a few. Number one, my lifestyle. Now, one thing that you must understand about me is that even though I look like a hyperactive, joking monster on camera, I am not an extrovert and I do not like to go out. I spend a lot of time at home working on my business, studying when I was a student, and taking every opportunity I can to sleep because I am very sleep deprived. But really, like, if I got a guide dog, that guide dog would hardly go out because I hardly go out. And one of the most important things about keeping a guide dog is you must bring them out on a regular basis. There are a few reasons why. Number one, it keeps them healthy. You should be doing this with any dog that you have, regardless of whether or not it's a service animal. Dogs need to go out to walk, and that is just a fact. Guide dogs are also not as capable at performing their job when they are fat and lazy and unfit, and so it is actually potentially a hazard to your safety if you do not take your guide dog out enough to exercise. On a similar note, guide dogs are just like, any animal, which is to say that we have brains that are imperfect. Guide dogs can forget their training if they are not exposed to regular stimulus, and especially exposed to different types of stimulus. So not only do you have to take the dog outdoors regularly, you also have to devise a routine around taking the guide dog to unfamiliar spaces so that basically the doggo doesn't get complacent. And so because I live such a sedentary lifestyle where I spend all my time at home, whether it's for work or leisure, a guide dog is just probably not the right idea for someone like me. You might be able to make the argument that getting a guide dog might be, sufficient motivation for me to go out and get fit. And though that is a valid reason, that should not be a primary reason to adopt the responsibility of getting a service animal, as I will explain more in a bit. Also, one final thing that I should note is that though my current lifestyle is very sedentary, my future career aspirations might take me out of the house more often, but not in the way that would be beneficial to a guide dog. So one of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm building a business, basically doing public speaking and giving keynote presentations on what it's like to live with blindness, on digital accessibility, and how to overcome life challenges. And so if my speaking career really goes somewhere, that could mean that I would be spending a lot of time overseas, and traveling with a guide dog or any animal is a nightmare. You have to go through customs, the dog has to get vaccinations, sometimes in certain countries there's even quarantine periods, and it's just not worth it. At least it's not worth it to someone like me. Right now, my lifestyle and the lifestyle needed to get a guide dog responsibly just don't really match up. The second reason, which is really, really important, is the cost. So yes, the guide dog is free, but by God, if it weren't free, this would be a massive problem because it costs anywhere between $40,000 to over $100,000 USD to train a guide dog. It is really expensive. Luckily for prospective guide dog owners here in Singapore, there are means for the cost of the dog to be subsidized, and basically the dog is free. So if the dog is free, then what's the problem? Well, the problem is the dog needs to eat, the dog needs to do a bunch of things, they need medication, they need treatment when they're sick, and a lot of these things are also subsidized, at least here where I am in Singapore, by Guide Dogs Singapore, but it is still not free. And money is money, and if you watch my video where I talked about raising money for charity, I blatantly stated in that video that I do not have a lot of money. I am not rich by any means. And so the running cost of owning a guide dog can depend on what you get for the dog, obviously, but it costs generally about $100 to maybe $500 a month at most to sufficiently take care of a guide dog. And while that is not an insane, unfathomable, unreasonable amount of money, I'm just not at the stage in my life where I can make that kind of commitment for many, many years. And so as you can see from these reasons, it's not really about me not wanting a guide dog. I just think it would be incredibly irresponsible for me, given my current life situation, to have a guide dog. And I would not let other people's love of dogs persuade me to get a service animal just because they think it would be cool or cute, or it would be such a waste if you didn't get the animal. It is free. No, it is not. And that's a terrible set of reasons to get a service animal. Now, obviously, there are really good reasons to get a guide dog. And so let's talk about some of them here. Number 1, navigating outdoors with a guide dog is much smoother than navigating outdoors with a white cane. This is just the truth because of how you have to use a white cane versus what a guide dog can do. Now, a white cane, for all its benefits, it doesn't need to be fed, it doesn't need to be groomed, you don't have to take it to the vet, and if it breaks, you're not gonna cry. Oh god. So white canes, for all their benefits, come with the obvious drawback of the fact that they are a non-living thing. And so they're not going to help you be able to magically avoid obstacles or give you warnings or anything of that sort. How you use a white cane is you have to walk continuously with the white cane sweeping in front of you, left to right, until the cane bumps into something, and then you know that there's an obstacle in front of you. This obviously is a kind of like an interruption-based navigation process where you have to walk until you hit something and then walk until you hit another thing, and that's just the reality of using a white cane when you're going outdoors. In contrast, a guide dog will follow your instructions but help you navigate around the obstacle. Because the guide dog can see the obstacle, it's doing that for you, obviously. And so the guide dog, when you're out and about, would go like, oh, that's a pillar in front of you, let's not bang into it, let's walk around it. Oh, there's a pit hole, don't wait until you get to the edge and you can feel the fact that it's there, let's take a detour around the hole so that we don't fall in together. That is how navigating with a guide dog works, and it can feel extremely smooth. It's basically like driving a vehicle where you just have to key in the GPS coordinates and it would orientate and move by itself. That's how using a guide dog is like. It's like driving a car. And so that is honestly one of the best reasons to get a guide dog, because it makes you look more confident. For some people, it makes you feel more confident, and it is a genuinely smoother experience to go outdoors with a guide dog by your side. Number 2, companionship. Now there is a very big difference between what I said earlier, which were bad reasons for owning a guide dog, and this reason for owning a guide dog. Getting a guide dog just because dogs are cute or just because it's free is a really bad reason to get a guide dog. But it is undeniable that getting a guide dog means that you have a companion that is loyal and trained to serve you and watch out for your safety. And that means a lot for people with vision impairments, or really people with disabilities of any sort, because it can be really lonely to be a person with a disability. Especially when you are blind, it can be difficult to make friends. After all, there is that saying that 80% of socializing is based on non-verbal cues. So for some people, especially those who lose their eyesight later in life, it can be incredibly lonely to be blind, and a guide dog can really go a long way in making someone feel better. Number 3, guide dogs are excellent wingmen. Now, this is not really a good reason to get a guide dog, but if you get a guide dog and you are a blind guy especially, My god! Will chicks ever come to you? I sound like such a sleaze. But honestly, this is really true. Every single guy who I talk to who has a guide dog has brought up the fact that many more girls will talk to you if you have a guide dog by your side. And this makes total sense. Dogs are cute, dogs are personable, dogs are chick magnets, but one thing about being a responsible guide dog owner is you cannot let this get in the way of the dog being able to perform their duties. You cannot let people just touch your dog while it's on duty, because if it is trained, if it is programmed to think that it is okay for people to touch it or play with it while it's supposed to be working, that can lead to some really dangerous situations. In the book Blind Ambition by my friend Chad E. Foster, there is a situation in the book where he mentioned that he allowed his guide dog to get too friendly with women, and one day the dog actually saw someone who it recognized across the street, and it was so excited to meet this person that it dragged Chad across busy traffic just so that it could meet this woman and let her play with it. And that is very, very scary for very obvious reasons. And so this is why if you see anyone outdoors who has a guide dog, do not touch it until you get the permission of the owner. That's my PSA for today. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Okay, but seriously, not just for guys, for women as well, having a guide dog can be an excellent conversation starter or icebreaker, because everyone would love to talk to you about your dog. That is very normal, that is a very human experience, and especially if you're comfortable with navigating those beginning conversations that are going to be all about your dog, but hopefully be able to navigate the conversation so that eventually it's not just all about the dog. Well, if you're comfortable and confident in doing these kinds of things, having a guide dog can really be a boon to your social life. Now, there are many other reasons why it is a good idea and why it may not be a good idea for certain people to be equipped with guide dogs. And so I want to summarize and wrap up by mentioning one point which I actually brought up earlier, but I want to reiterate. Getting a service animal like a guide dog or seeing eye dog is a responsibility. The guide dog is not a plaything. The guide dog is not going to be totally independent and will depend on you for care. And most importantly, one very important thing to realize about a guide dog is not a pet. A guide dog is a service animal or working animal, meaning that it was trained for a very specific function. And so there's a lot of care that goes into maintaining a service animal that are just beyond the scope of this video. And quite frankly, I'm not the right person to talk about this because I don't even own a guide dog myself. But these are all considerations for getting a guide dog. So if you ever wondered why people like me who are blind but don't have a guide dog, wondering why we don't have a guide dog, or if maybe you are a person with a vision impairment and you are thinking about getting a guide dog yourself, the reality is there are important things to consider before you get a guide dog. And this is why, despite being offered multiple times to get a guide dog for free, I just didn't say yes. So I hope that was educational and interesting to you. And maybe if you thought to ask me this question before but didn't dare to do so, maybe this would answer your question. And so if you want to know more about what it's like to live with blindness from someone like me, hit like, tickle the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that you can stay informed about future uploads from moi. And thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!